It begins, perhaps, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind where the light through the window seems softer than usual, as though the world itself has decided to move a little slower. You're sitting by the window, the same one you've looked through for decades, watching the faint dance of dust in a golden ray. The hum of life outside feels distant, a child's laughter fading down the street, the rustle of leaves stirred by a mild November breeze. There's a book beside you you've read half a dozen times, a cup of tea cooling on the table, and that familiar ache of stillness, not unpleasant but heavy, like silence with a heartbeat. You think of people you once sat beside, the ones whose laughter filled these rooms, the ones whose voices are now echoes in memory. You are not lonely, not exactly, but the days stretch differently now, quieter, slower, emptier in their corners. And somewhere inside, there's a question that's been sitting quietly too. How do I feel joy again when the world has grown so still around me? Perhaps it isn't the same kind of joy we once knew. When we were younger, joy arrived like a thunderclap, loud, immediate, rushing in without asking permission. It came with the laughter of friends, the warmth of family dinners, the thrill of plans yet to unfold. But after 60, joy seems to have changed its shape. It no longer knocks, it whispers. It hides in smaller places, in the way sunlight touches the kitchen tiles, in the rhythm of a clock, in the act of remembering without pain. Still, we often forget how to look for it. We convince ourselves that happiness belongs to youth, that the quiet years are for reflection but not delight. Yet somewhere, under all that quiet, joy waits patiently, softer, but still alive. The truth is, being alone after 60 is not the end of connection. It's the beginning of a different kind of conversation, one between you and the world, you and memory, you and your own soul. It's a season where joy doesn't come from noise or crowds, but from peace, from noticing what was always there, just hidden beneath the rush of the years. Over time, I've come to believe there are ways, gentle, real ways, to feel joy again, even in solitude. They don't demand youth or company or even luck. They ask only for awareness, a willingness to see beauty in what remains. So tonight, as you sit in that familiar chair, listening to the soft hum of evening, let's take a small journey together. 6 calming ways to rediscover joy, not as it once was, but as it now wishes to be found. Quiet, sincere, and deeply human. The first calm way to feel joy again, when the house is quiet and the phone seldom rings, is to learn the art of listening without needing to reply. In younger years, silence was often something to be filled with words, music, laughter, or plans. But now, in this slower chapter, silence can become something sacred. When you sit by the window or walk through your garden, and the world around you hums gently, the sound of leaves brushing, the distant murmur of traffic, the clock ticking in its steady rhythm, you begin to sense that life has never stopped speaking. You just needed the stillness to hear it again. In those moments, you start realizing that joy doesn't only come from others. It also blooms quietly when you feel connected to the breath of the world itself. It's a soft communion, a kind of peace that seeps in slowly. Listening without speaking becomes a form of prayer, one where every sound, even the smallest, reminds you that you still belong here. The second gentle path to rediscover joy lies in touching memory, but not staying lost in it. It's easy to sit in the shadows of what once was, to look at old photographs or remember holidays and feel the sharp sting of what's gone. But if you let those memories breathe, if you let them exist not as ghosts, but as gentle companions, something magical happens. A scent, a melody, or even the creak of a chair can awaken not sorrow, but gratitude. Gratitude that you were given those moments at all. There's a quiet joy in realizing that your life has been full, and that fullness remains inside you, even when the people or the places have changed. Sometimes closing your eyes and revisiting an old summer afternoon can feel like lighting a candle in a dark room, not to mourn the darkness, but to remember that light once lived there, and in some way still does.
And then comes the third calm way, creating small rituals that remind you of your own presence. It might be watering a plant each morning, writing down one kind thought before bed, or simply brewing tea in the same chipped cup you've always used. These little acts, so ordinary, so humble, become anchors in time. They tell you that you are still part of the living rhythm of things. The world doesn't just move around you, it moves with you. You start to find beauty not in grand adventures or celebrations, but in the repetition of things that feel like home. There's something deeply comforting in realizing that joy can live inside habits, that meaning can be found in the simplest routines when they are done with love. These first three ways, listening deeply, touching memory with grace, and creating gentle rituals, form the beginning of your quiet return to joy. They don't demand anything loud or public. They just invite you back into the world through your senses and your heart, reminding you that even when life feels smaller, its beauty is still infinite in detail. The fourth calm way to feel joy again when solitude feels heavy on your shoulders is to let kindness become your new language. There's something about growing older that strips away the unnecessary layers, the noise, the pride, the rush. What's left is what truly matters: kindness, gentleness, and the warmth of giving without expecting. Sometimes the greatest joy arrives not when we receive, but when we extend a hand toward another, even in small, quiet ways. It might be writing a short note to someone who's lonely, offering a smile to the woman at the grocery store, or feeding the stray cat that visits your porch each morning. These small acts do something profound. They remind your heart that it still has the power to touch the world. When you offer kindness, you don't just give, you become connected again. The walls between you and them soften, and life begins to feel shared once more. It's not about fixing or saving anyone. It's about remembering that love, in its simplest form, is an active force, one that still lives inside you and longs to be expressed.
The fifth way comes in a more private form. allowing yourself to dream again, even if differently. There's a quiet misconception that dreams belong to the young, that after a certain age, one should simply rest and reflect. But the heart never truly stops wanting. Maybe your dreams are no longer about achievement or adventure. Maybe they're about creation, curiosity, or peace. Perhaps it's learning to paint the sky as you see it now, tending a garden of herbs, or writing down your stories so they don't fade into silence. Dreaming isn't about chasing something far away anymore. It's about staying alive to the possibilities within reach. When you give yourself permission to imagine again, you awaken a part of yourself that still hungers for color, surprise, and meaning. It doesn't matter how small the dream. What matters is that it belongs to you. And maybe within these two ways, kindness and dreaming, you rediscover something tender that had been waiting quietly under the years of responsibility and loss. The world after 60 isn't smaller, it's closer. The beauty of it doesn't come from running outward, but from moving inward toward your own heart. When you offer kindness, the soul stretches. When you dream, it breathes again. Together, they form a gentle rhythm. Give and imagine. Give and imagine. Until one day, you realize you've built a new kind of happiness, one that doesn't depend on who's around or what's missing. It simply flows softly from within. And then there is the sixth way, the quietest and perhaps the deepest of them all, learning to befriend yourself again. It sounds simple, almost too soft to matter, yet it is the most transformative of all. After a lifetime of caring for others, children, partners, friends even, it can feel strange to turn that same tenderness inward. But this final way of rediscovering joy begins when you look at yourself not as someone waiting for company, but as someone worthy of your own affection. Sit with yourself as you would with a dear friend. Listen to your thoughts without judgment. Forgive your past without conditions, and speak kindly to the person you've become. It's in this self-friendship that peace begins to take root. You no longer measure your worth by what you do or who remembers you. Instead, you begin to feel whole simply by being. There's a profound serenity in realizing that you are enough, that even in solitude, you are accompanied by the entire story of who you are.
When you reach this understanding, something inside you shifts. You start to see that joy isn't a fleeting visitor, but a quiet companion that lives beneath the surface of every day. It appears when you treat yourself with the same patience you once offered others. It glows in the simple choices, making yourself a beautiful breakfast, taking a slow walk without needing a destination, or whispering gratitude before sleep. This kind of joy is steady, like the hum of a song you've always known, but never stopped long enough to truly hear. It doesn't erase the ache of missing someone or the longing for the past. Instead, it teaches you how to hold those feelings gently without letting them harden into sorrow. By the time you've walked through these 6 ways, listening deeply, touching memory, creating rituals, offering kindness, dreaming softly, and befriending yourself, you come to understand something most people never learn. Joy isn't something you find after loss, it's something you remember. It was always there, woven quietly through your days, in the colors of morning, in the stillness of dusk, in the pulse of your own breath. All that changed was how closely you were willing to look. And now, with age and solitude as your teachers, you finally see it, not as a spark that comes and goes, but as a steady light, patient and eternal, waiting to be noticed once more. In the end, joy is not a goal or a destination, it is a returning. It is the quiet walk back to yourself after years of running in every direction. When you are alone after 60, the world doesn't shrink, it simply becomes more transparent. You begin to see what was always behind the noise, the subtle beauty of being alive, even in stillness. You start to notice how your hands move when you pour water into a cup, how the sky deepens its color before night falls, how your own breath feels like a tide, in and out, steady and sure. This is what joy truly becomes, a gentle awareness of existence itself. You stop asking, "What now?" and begin whispering, "Thank you." Gratitude, once practiced quietly, turns loneliness into solitude, and solitude into peace. There will still be moments when the silence feels too large, when the absence of familiar voices feels almost unbearable. But even then, there's something sacred in that emptiness, because within it lies the truth that you are still capable of love, not just for others, but for life itself. The joy you seek is not gone, it has simply changed its voice. It no longer shouts from crowded rooms or bursts of laughter. It hums softly through ordinary moments, the smell of rain, the creak of a floorboard, the feeling of warmth against your skin. The beauty of aging is that it teaches you how to listen for that hum, how to recognize it as the sound of your own being. So perhaps in this quiet chapter, joy is no longer something you chase, but something you welcome. You open the door each morning and let it in, however small it seems, in a memory, a bird song, a smile at your own reflection. You realize that life, even now, still speaks kindly to you, still offers you mornings to wake to and nights to rest within. And when you finally sit at the end of a long day, looking out at the world that has grown both softer and wiser, you understand something gentle and profound. Maybe growing older isn't about losing things. It's about learning how to hold what remains with grace. Because joy was never lost, it was only waiting for you to slow down enough to feel it again.